Good morning, everyone. So please give us a couple of minutes. We are waiting for the resource person. Okay, very good morning to all of you. Hope I am audible to you. Tilini, can you confirm?
Yes, Dr. Samantha.
Okay. Okay, again, very good morning to the online knowledge sharing session organized by the Young Scientist Forum, National Science and Technology Commission, Sri Lanka. The Young Scientist Forum is one of the consultative fora established by the National Science and Technology Commission to engage young scientists on matters related to the advancement of science, technology, innovation sectors in Sri Lanka. The YSF, the steering committee of the Young Scientist Forum, has initiated a series of knowledge sharing sessions with the objective of creating awareness and disseminating knowledge among young scientists on current and emerging scientific matters. So we all know that currently we are facing a shortage of food commodities due to the economic crisis prevailing in the country. I would say, first of all, I would say the starting point of most food commodities is a crop production system or animal production system or combination of both these components. So in a broader context, it's an agricultural system. So in crop production systems, different crop species and varieties have been used to produce food, some of which are still underutilized or neglected. Actually, the potentials to provide alternative food solutions, particularly in a crisis situation like this, is not well explored. So that's why the steering committee of the YSF thought of organizing these knowledge sharing sessions in order to disseminate this knowledge to the young scientists in the country. So we have invited Professor Gamini Pushpakumara, who is a well-experienced expert in this field, to share his thought in this regard. Sir, you are warmly welcome to the session, and let me briefly give an introduction to the profile of the Professor Gamini Pushpakumara. Professor Gamini Pushpakumara is a senior professor attached to the Department of Crop Science, Faculty of Agriculture, University of Peradeniya, and he is the former dean of the same faculty. His research and teaching areas include system approach in agricultural systems, agroforestry and home gardens, biodiversity, and many more. He has also served as the country licensed scientist to the World Agroforestry Center for many years. So today, he will be exploring the potentials of underutilized or neglected crop species and varieties to provide some kind of food solutions to the food crisis. So let me explain the flow of the today's sessions. During the first 45 minutes, the resource person will be delivering his talk. Then we will have 15 minutes Q&A session. So if you have any questions to ask from the resource person, please put those into the chat box. So I'll make sure the question raised will be directed to the Professor Gamini Pushpakumara during the Q&A sessions. So with that brief introduction, let me invite Professor Gamini Pushpakumara, our resource person today, to start his talk on food solutions for possible food crisis through underutilized or neglected crop species and varieties in Sri Lanka. So over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Samantha. A very good morning to all of you. Sorry for that actually 5-minute delay. So I have to return from the Vice Chancellor office. Thank you very much for inviting me to the Young Scientist Forum. So I also feel a little bit more on young category than the present situation, because I'm talking to young scientists, because you are the cream of the country at present, and you are the future of the country as well. So I thought that once the Samantha invite me, I'm very much willing to share actually the knowledge what I know, because we have involved with this process for a longer period. I think, can you see my slides?
Yes, sir, we can see. Sir, can you please go to the presentation mode?
Okay, sure. Is it okay?
Yeah. Okay, sir.
I think I try to provide some of the information actually we have collected during last several years. And in fact, we are working on this underutilized fruit trees since 2004. And at that time, actually, some people asked why we are looking about underutilized trees and underutilized fruits and underutilized vegetables. I think now present day crisis will tell us why we need to look into all these aspects. So we started, I think we need to continue on this area by bringing actually these underutilized species into wider cultivation, and I would say that wider use. So we have done that with Ministry of Environment, and then very recently the National Science Foundation published the natural resources of Sri Lanka condition and trends. So where we contributed to the agriculture genetic resources, and then we produced actually a checklist of agriculturally important plants of Sri Lanka. And in 2004 and 2005, 2006 and 7, so we produced underutilized fruit trees in Sri Lanka. And going beyond that, so we have published actually some guidelines for the future, that is the Fruits for Future series, namely the bale and several species were taken into consideration at that time. And then we look about actually that in further to contribute to the international arena. So that I'm very happy with that experience, actually sharing that information with you for future of this species and perhaps the future of the country plus future of the globe as well. Having said that, let me show actually one of the photos which has been displayed in quite some times ago at Horana. That is about 200 grams per day, right? So I think we have to eat 200 grams per day, the fruits and vegetables, fruits plus vegetables. So 200 grams per fruits and 200 grams per vegetables. I think that is the standard. Why it is essential? Because it is health of the people. And when we're looking about that, we are a little far behind actually this 200 gram concept at present actually. So we need 200 grams per fruits per day, 200 grams vegetable per day. I think what we like is basically we like to eat a diversity in our life. I think it cannot be avoided. I think when we are having a same thing to do every day, so we fed up with that. So as the food, so we need to look about the diversity. So how does this diversity come to our plate? And what is happening at current situation? If you look about that Sri Lankan context in the hunger index and the global food security index, I think at present we are poorly, rank at high level in the with respect to the food security. So our ranking is getting down and every year. So with this situation and the COVID issue, as well as current dollar crisis, plus the issues we created due to fertilizer issues and agrochemical issues, and then at present issue of gas and power cut, and then high price of foods, I think it is 3 times higher. Can you mute actually the participants?
Yeah, sir, please go ahead. Yeah.
Power cuts and then high price of foods and such kind of a situation can create a huge impact on not only the food security. I'm not worried too much about the food security, but what is worried is that the nutritional security. I think that impact is not probably on our generation, but on the next generation. So which is the future of the country. So what will happen there is that all these problems reduce the quality of food. I think all of us can experience even now. Our case also, we reduce actually certain items in our food. And why? It is because of that. So you have the poor quality in some cases, and you have sometimes reduced safety, especially when you don't have gas. So cooking is a real issue actually. So if cooking is a real issue, then safety of the food is sometimes a problem. And then when we are having this kind of issues, so you have reduced the purchasing power of the people, and you have reduced actually avenues also. Earlier you can go anywhere and get it. Now you cannot go because you don't have fuel actually to move. And that ultimately increase malnutrition, which create unhealthy and unnutritional society actually in the country. So I think that is the critical issue that we all face now. Now, I would say that most of the underutilized fruits and vegetables are food for crisis and food for crisis. And we all looking about all these because they required actually very low inputs in most cases, and sometimes mostly freely available. I think if you're having a home garden, you don't need to grow species like gotukola, and you don't need to grow much of the species. They comes as the weeds, and they comes as actually different species. So some of the species are freely available, but unfortunately, due to our thinking and due to our attitudes and all others, we are not taking such species into our diet. So many of these species are having food value, nutritional value, and medicinal value. I think this is something very critical in the era of the COVID. Now, you can take the immunity by the vaccine, but what level of immunity you are having is much determined based on your food, and then how your system actually system support to protect against the viruses and all others. So therefore, rather than taking pills as pills or tablet as medicine, it is much better if we look about the food and the nutritional rich and medicinally value food items into your the food plate or food basket. I think much of the species are not even difficult to cultivate, but yet we are not even taking such species into our cultivation. And more importantly, it add variety to diet. So I think if you take about species that we are having, I will give details in the list later. So many species available, but unfortunately, we are very much limited with the very limited number of species in our food plate. And more importantly, I think if you take the trees of these species, they can help to mitigate actually environmental problems. In order to facilitate and support this, I think this is something that we can be proud about it. And some of these species are not always underutilized, but the trees make us a healthier and environmentally friendlier nation. Now, this is explaining about our forest situation. Now, you can see that largely our wet zone is very low forest in most of the area, and especially district like Gampaha and Kalambu. In Gampaha, the area of forest cover is 0.3%. And if you look about the tree cover, that is quite different. Why it is that? So it is because of not necessarily underutilized fruit trees, but due to the trees that support actually the human and that created by human. And it does not necessarily means that we don't need forest. So forest are primary vegetation that what we need, at least the remaining area. But if you have good tree planting and use of the plant species, correct plant species, then it can change actually the environment and all other aspects. So benefits of underutilized species are sorry, enormous to us. Now, if you look about that agriculturally important plants, so you can see that 792 important plant species, of which 38 vegetable species and leafy vegetable 53. I think this is quite remarkable actually. So which is very much lacking in our food plate. So very rarely people use leafy vegetables, but it is an essential component to maintain actually nutritional level and especially the fiber level of our diet. So therefore, this component is a very critical one. And if you look about number of species, so you can have one species per day actually. That, but only problem is that we are not taking such into the our plate because we probably not even know about those species or not even take such species into our plate. And then we have 19 tube and root crops and 87 fruit crop species and 111 medicinal plant. Actually, this number is quite high. And this medicinal plants with some food value are 111. And then we have pulse crop 9, cereal crops 13, and spices and condiments 27 different species. And out of that, large numbers are underutilized or use the most of the species we use in very occasional or rare manner, but not properly used in our plates. And we have documented actually those species in this publication. One is that the checklist of agriculturally important plants. and then the agrobiodiversity of Sri Lanka. Now, look about this the leafy vegetable species. Out of this number, at least I can see that. So this is Aguna, and this is the Watakadalu. And so you can take this as a leafy vegetables. Katurumurunga quite famous with us. But how many of us having actually a tree? So probably COVID period we have planted, then thereafter actually we forget. And Kanku, Mukunu, and Botukola we are taking from the shops, and they are cultivated. But there are a couple of leafy vegetables that these are naturally growing, that Alakola in the abundant paddy fields, and especially in the waterlogged area, and also this Kohila. So those are considered as some of the important and the nutritious as well as fibrous leafy vegetables, plus Niviti and Sarana, things we need to incorporate it into our diet. Actually, this provide some kind of a local market arises as a result of their importance, certainly because of their values, but it is limited only to a certain crowd actually. Now, if you go to market, so some crowd looking about this, but I think we need to promote this not only in upper middle class and upper class, but also in the lower middle class and the poor category, because these are actually the essence of providing minerals and fiber for the diet. And also a certain product like the banana is heavily utilized, but nowadays all these species are coming into market and playing a dominant role in our society and the diet. So if you take about one species or two, now look about that the Kohila, we have done some work actually, and we identified that there are diversity in the species, and there are diversity in the kind of a varieties, and there are spine things and non-spiny things, and sometimes the color is different, and you can make it into a curry, and you can make into a sambal or salad or sini sambal or porridges or whatever. I think if you take about one species, if diversity arises in varieties, and sometimes if diversity not arises, so people trying to make it into a quite different setup. So this is another species actually which we can look about that uses. But I warn actually the people, this photograph has been taken by myself, and it is in dry zone, and you can see that growing of this Kohila, and you can see this pipe, and this is a species which love some kind of amphibian status, water and the terrestrial status. And what these people done is that diverting their washing machine water into the the place that where they growing the Kohila. And I don't think that actually they can produce a safe foods. So it is very important to understand the system we produce any of these crops. Where do we produce and how do we produce? And that going to impact actually on the quality. And as we discussed, so even the present era, the crisis era, we cannot actually find actually shortcuts for this, and you have to divert this water. And I have a big concern in almost all homes. We are using quite substantial level of the chemicals for this, and its impact almost like agrochemicals. So we have to be a little bit careful actually when we growing this and when we planting and cultivating all these crops. And this crop, I don't know how many of you know about that. This is Mella, and which has produced actually quite unique smell like urine. But if you prepared it properly, like in the fried format or like in the correct way of preparation of curry, and it is a delicious and very nutritious food. And I think that is something that all of us need to understand. Now, if we all discuss about our food pattern and our the items we produce for foods, we know that our mothers are quite better than present ourselves. And why it is that? I think it is mainly because of the ethnobotanical knowledge that they carry, and then some of the ways that actually they produce foods, and some of the things that they do to food items, and in such a way that you can make actually food. It is not to eat actually as the reason, but I think food, when you look certain foods, It is actually inviting for eating. I think that is the culture of the food culture. So most of the underutilized species preparation need to look about that ethnobotanical information. So which is very critical actually for all of us to look. Now the second example, I think this Neeramulia, which is one of the important species, but you should not eat that in every day. And this can provide actually a drink, and people boil it, and the water is used as something like a tea. But if you drink it in every day, and you're going to have some trouble. No. Now that is actually the something that we all need to look into consideration. Quite sometimes ago, we did not eat manioc with the ginger, but now the new changes of the composition of the genetics and the way that we look about species can change actually. But much of the underutilized species are still under the natural environment. Therefore, we need to link that with the knowledge of the people and the way that actually they use this in the preparation of curries and others. So let me give another example. Now you can see that spines of this plant, and this plant sometimes is without having spines, and you have to be very careful about that, because the spine is a way that actually the plant is having a protective mechanism. The moment that you don't have the spines, what will happen? So plant trying to create actually different mechanism, protective mechanism, probably the composition. So we need to look about that the stages. I think that is the place where the ethnobotany can support actually the current generation and how to use that species in the proper manner. So we need to look about the species, and we need to look about that associated indigenous knowledge and the local knowledge, which help us to actually use this species into wider level. Now, take example like Tampala, right? Probably in the African context, the Ratu Tampala is one of the delicious one. But we had that in our places as well. But now getting, little by little, it is disappearing up to some level. And if you put the cow dung into your float, I think this Katu Tampala Kura Tampala is naturally coming up. But how many of us using that one? But some people say that I don't know about preparation. But if you prepare this in correct manner, I think these two are producing one of the delicious the curry, so as the Ratu Tampala. Now, see that actually the amaranthus, so much of species, and out of such species, very few come into our food plates, and it will give to color to the food plate as well as the diversity to the food plate in various other forms. Now, how do we use this underutilized species? So you can sometimes use in the fresh format, boil format, salad format, steam format, malun or sambola, or make into curry and dried it and then use separately, and then smoked and canned, pickle, soup, stir fry and put into omelette and make into omelette, and so much of different ways, right? So different underutilized species are providing different type of products. So that can add into our food basket in various ways. Now, what are the benefits of this kind of a supportive species? And they provide a lot of antioxidant. I think nowadays people are assessing antioxidants, and way that actually we looking about this, and a lot of species can provide a lot of antioxidants for us actually from this underutilized species. There's two species to name actually. Dung is one of such. So which having the madang in the dry zone, and the so normal dung in the water-based environment of the wet zone. Plus, so we have uguras and also lovi up to some level. So they are having a lot of antioxidants, as some other fruits in the our vicinity. And then vitamins, especially the A and C. I think mango is one of such fruit species, so which I feel that up to some extent is underutilized in our society, and which provide actually very high level of vitamin A. And in fact, the studies conducted in African continent reveal that. So if you take mango, if you give mango, small mango for the small kid, that will provide actually the adequate amount of vitamin E requirement, daily vitamin A requirement. And vitamin C also same. I think Nelly is perhaps the richest source. If you take Sri Lanka, the richest source of vitamin C in the highest vitamin C content fruit in the country. And then in addition, they provide folate, potassium, fiber, flavonoid, phytochemicals. And so now people trying to analyze actually different type of chemicals associated with different products. But importantly, when you eat these kind of fruits, so sometimes you may get actually unknown chemicals as well. So that help you to maintain your system. So vegetables, so we have utilized types and underutilized types here. So, but if you are to name some, I don't think that effectively we are utilizing this double. Quite some times ago, we had actually the research institute also, but unfortunately now it is very rarely. Now I will take example of Tumbakaravila, and now it's a little bit coming to the market, but not up to the level that actually we are getting carrot, beet, and the rabu and things like that. So we need to look about that, how to support this system. Now, if you take about these two crops, the Dambala, we have red type and we have the green type. And we can use Dambala in various ways. And if you ask from your mother, they say that, okay, you can produce it into a curry, you can produce into a fried format, and so much of different ways, so as the Niviti, right? So if you take Niviti also, you have the green one, red one, and I think varieties we having, and then you have Gus Niviti and the things like that, and those things add actual to the value of the food basket. And let me take a couple of other species as well. And if you take another species which we probably not utilize up to much level is the moringa. Unfortunately, even the Tamil culture now reduce utilizing of this crop. Earlier, moringa is one of the common ingredient in their life, and especially with the sambaru and others, but now is getting less and less because a lack of available plants. Up to some level, we are good in actually this moringa cultivation, because we trying to produce this moringa leaf powder and send to the foreign countries. That is good in the sense of foreign exchange earning. But I think what is more important is that if you look about moringa, how many different types of products we producing. Even if the dog bite you, right? I think in the traditional medicine, what people tend to do is that you mix with the moringa leaf plus the lime together and then place into the place you have the dog bite. What does it mean? I think we have a lot of associated knowledge which probably we not taken into consideration of the utilization of this species. And instead, so we sometimes too much of market oriented. That is, I'm not saying that it is bad actually. It is good. But what is critical is that use this species in our diet. I think that is the most critical part as far as our health and our population's food and nutritional security is concerned. And sending that will provide actually opportunities for us to go different level. Now, these are, if you browse internet, you can find actually a large number of different products, but Murunga fruit is useful, and Murunga leaf is useful, and Murunga, even the bark is also useful. And so various way you can produce that. And sometimes Moringa is used to actually get rid of certain problems and certain issues of certain food species. So if we know about that species, I think we can more utilize such species in a different way. And growing this plant is not so difficult. Only thing is that you need light and others. And then you have species, you have varieties. Now, this first one showing that actually the different species plus varieties together. And we have loofah species from normal eating loofah to Niam Vetakolu and the cluster fruits, as well as, so some of the species are good for actually අපි ඇඟ තුල්ලන්න ගන්න the brush එක හදන්න එහෙම ගොඩක් වෙලාවට පාවිච්චි කරන්න පුළුවන්. But so these different the varieties produce different type of I think in Sri Lanka we have different level of varieties from certain species, but in certain, now even I would say that Niam Vetakolu is underutilized. Vetakolu is utilized up to some level, but not so as the Niam Vetakolu, and it will provide actually a diversity from one end to another end. And look about that diversity of the varieties of this aubergine or brinjal and the talumbatu. So there is a complication of the species of this particular category. That is why you have actually huge variety of diversity. They can cross each other. So you have round shaped one to elongated one, and in between you have so much of differences. So some of these are varieties, and in fact these two are two different species. And then on top of that you have actually Timbadu as well, right? So you have so much of diversity in the underutilized species. Now, if you take about fruit species, so this is something that it explains not exclusively everything, but some of the species to name that you have bale and you have divul. And I think if Sri Lanka to take something unique actually to the country, divul can be one of the species which can be converted into a good drink. And also divul fruit is very, very delicious, and you have diversity in divul as well. You have seeded one, non-seeded one, you have clustered one, non-clustered one, and you can even train that plant into a kind of a certain the low height plant to produce the fruits. And then we have Annona species, several Annona species, Katu Anoda, Sini Anoda, Valley Anoda, and things like that. But those are also underutilized. But luckily that some people brought the importance of the Annona, especially with respect to Katu Anoda, Annona muricata. And because of that, the issue of the something like the cancer supportive chemical, now people are interesting. And the Siambala is one of the fruit actually which we less utilize except for the culinary purposes. And then Karola Kabila and Veralu, and up to some level we use, but it is highly underutilized. Mora, and also this species quite common in dry zone. We are very utilized in very not in a proper manner. And we did work on a couple of species. And if you are having a Nelly plant in your home, it is having something like a palms in your home. And because it says that eat amla a day and keep doctor at a bay. So the nursery rhyme actually we use is that eat apple a day and keep doctor at some place. So keep doctor away from us. But are we taking this amla into our general diet? I don't see that actually. And now when we looking about this plant, there are level of understanding that if you hit the fruit trees more, you're going to get the more fruits. I think this is not under open sun. This is under the coconut plantation. And if you see about in this slide, this fruit doesn't produce, this plant doesn't produce fruit, but this one produce fruit. And there is a plantation in Kundasale from the identified varieties which continuously and consistently producing because of the correct pruning. And we need to identify package. And also when we're looking about that amla, so you need to look about the quality of the fruits as well as the content of the nutrient. And also there are thousands of different products coming from amla. And we have documented all these and actually published that in that format. And so it is available. And second species actually I like to tell that is the bale. So it is also a pharmacy at your home. And I think the one fruit that can support actually two contrasting situations like constipation and the diarrhea is the bale fruit, right? And bale flowers, bale, even the stones of these bales, the katu, belly mal, all are actually in some form of other. You can use it and you can boil it and you can eat it and you can make into a drink. And also it is possible to have some kind of a plant. This is not a this is not actually the taken picture from someone else. I took this one, and this is a plant actually if you are having a space problem. So bale is growing up to some level, but you can take this species into a different level and you can actually, and also jackfruit is now is coming into picture up to some level and becoming quite popular, but quite neglected actually until very recently because of the crisis. They are coming into picture. This is not induced one. This is a natural fruiting one of at the body, and you can see that actually how much fruit they can produce and how much color they can add into plate and what sort of trees you can. And if you have adequate lands, so you can have a good growing tree, so as in durian and other plants. But if you have a small plant, and this is a plant growing at the Kurunagala plantation, which is located in the dry zone area as their product. And this is a fruit-bearing plant which is having about 6-7 years old, and also not tall as this plant. So based on the environmental requirement, we all can change actually these species. And breadfruit is very not highly utilized plants, and it can provide actually the present price, the solution for present crisis. And more importantly, we have a lot of yam species, and we have a lot of different type of species. And again, it is important to use this with the ethnobotanical knowledge, and certain species are not suitable for certain categories of the certain stage of the human, especially the pregnant woman should not take actually this diasporia, because they are using that as a kind of the contraceptive in some other countries. So that is why the ethnobotanical ethnobotanical knowledge is important with some of the species. And another species which is a crisis food, when you growing this, even you take out actually entire plant and throw away, a small rhizome can actually produce the next generation. So which is not taking actually into the high level of utilization in most of the places. And finger millet is a grain crop which is less utilized in most cases. And one might ask from me where you can grow these crops. And these crops can grow actually in the quite high-tech level as well. But they can be crops in China, crops from forest, and crops from coconut-based system. And much of the things are suitable for home garden, and can even grow in the rice-based system, something like Ovita system and others, and also tea and rubber-based system. And if we identify the right place, and if we provide actually right environment, and much of these species can grow actually and produce them. And one good example is home garden. And if you look about that, how many species, there are a large number of different species, and that such species can actually taken into our food basket. And this is something that how much land area we are having with the home garden. And it is about substantial, actually 14.3. Now it is this is quite higher. And also, if you look about that number of trees, and one person asked from me very recently, so how many trees, jackfruit trees in Sri Lanka? I think there were census in 2002, and based on that, we have 10 million, actually 10 million trees. And that 10 million trees can produce a quite high number. And this number exclude actually north and east. Probably this number is quite high now. Now, if you look about this, although they are underutilized, they can produce actually quite substantial level of production to us. And this is the way that we can incorporate. And this is the Gevat produce at Department of Agriculture at Gannorua. But not only that, even any other places. So you can have the way that actually you have spaces. So it is a matter of actually your thinking and your understanding. And what will happen actually for most of us, when we face a crisis, we are all together and then having this. But when we remove that crisis, we going back to actually comfort zone. I think that should avoid actually to get the food security. And this garden can provide actually as much as possible for their food and nutritional. So we call this as a nutritional garden, and small plot is enough actually to produce such kind of a species. So not even in the places like this, and they can produce their own species. So this is the example actually the coconut plantation start looking about the utilization of some of the species along the footpath or along the roads. So they establish the coconut, and it is now producing quite good number of fruits in such area. So any system, if you want to incorporate any species, so you can do that. So one of the important aspect is that actually, if you feel that you cannot, so you cannot. But if you feel that you can actually. Now you look about this coconut plant, and while all other plants are under something like a very brown condition, so coconut plant is producing enough fruits. How does it happen? This is in the dry zone. And in dry zone, what is necessary is that you need to take care actually. And if you take care and if you share actual information, so you can do that. Quite some times ago, the coconut is not recommended for the dry zone, but now it is recommended with the availability of the water. But how do you do that? So it is up to the actually people here. And you produce rice twice or thrice a day. And so you wash the rice at least twice or thrice a day. And if you leave out that water to the coconut plant itself is adequate. Actually, the principle of plant nutrient management and water management, and the way that you do not a matter, but what is necessary is that you need to provide actually adequate amount of water. So underutilized fruit trees also something like that. If you care them and if you look about that in the proper way, so you can actually make them a kind of a utilizable and supportive for us. If someone asks the question, will the local and underutilized neglected crop species and varieties help to achieve food and nutritional security of the country? The answer is actually yes, right? So it has to look about that. The answer is yes, and it can provide and support actually food crisis. It cannot solve the problem overnight, this food crisis, but they offer actually an economical and practical solutions with some kind of a value. But how do we do that? We need to work very collectively, and we need to disseminate information rightly. And we need to look about new dimension also, to look about that, paradigm shift of use only few species to higher number of species. So how do you do that actually? And I personally feel that despite lots of activities we have done, still the potential of underutilized fruits and underutilized vegetables had not been properly actually realized at all levels, right? And therefore their importance has not been surfaced properly. And how do we think about taking this into next level? I think we need to break the barriers. And what is the barrier actually we need to break? And we need partners for that. So one person or one institute cannot do that. So we need actually to build a good partnership, and sustainable use of this depend on actually the partnership. We need to link all the peoples, scientists and foresters, agroforesters, and also the institutions, and all need to work together actually to make this into happen. And I think this coordinated approach is essential for taking this into next level. And whom can do the work? An individual person, you and me can do that. Actually, you and me can take this into your utilization pattern and your places, and you can support that. And family can do that. And community also can do that. And there is places that communities safeguarding certain yam species, especially in Naranayak and certain places. And some districts are quite unique for certain underutilized species. So you can have district level planning for that. And country needs some planning. And we have country-wide planning process and global solution. So we need to take all these, spectrum into taking these underutilized fruit trees into different level. So we cannot exclude that individuals to global level, and each level we can play a big role. Good example, taking Tumbakaravila into cultivation. When you take Tumbakaravila, in first instance, people did not cultivate because they did not produce fruits. And obviously, it is a dioecious species. And there are male and female plants. And you need to have 5:1 ratio of male to female in order to produce this. And people work on this. And now it is good production. But still, the issue of pollination has not been properly addressed actually. So pollination issue is that this plant, the flowers are opening during the evening, and sorry, the late in the evening, and so sometimes it go up to actually next day morning. So early morning, so you need to do the pollination process, or you need to promote the pollination process during early morning at that level. So that way, so you can increase the production. So Tumbakaravila is one good example actually taking this underutilized situation into quite high utilization level at present scenario. Now, another example is that different kind of yam species now people are actually producing for export market. I think producing for export market is important, but utilizing those for ourselves is also quite important, and make sure that actually we are use them. And one might ask, okay, how do we actually approach this? And if someone asks from me, I will categorize the young scientists need to look about that crop biology, crop ecology, and also you need to look about genetic diversity and conservation. And you need to look about that nutritional basis of these fruits and vegetables, and agronomic research. How do we manage that? And fruit preparation based research and value added research, and ethnobotany and ethnobiology and biology, right? Ethnoecology and ethnobiology. But if you look about that individual component, we may provide actually some information, and we must have some kind of a multidisciplinary team work together to produce this underutilized fruit trees into utilized level. So I can see that actually the value of talking this particular aspect to the young scientists, and you can have a good program and good activities in order to bring these underutilized fruit trees or underutilized vegetables. But please look about that entire aspect of this value chain and how do we take that into the next level. So if we can do that for at least one or two prioritized species, I think we can be happy actually supporting underutilized fruit trees. And in addition, so we can take all these underutilized fruit trees into our food basket. So that is the place actually where I like to stop. And I think I like to have a kind of a good discussion with all of you for how do we take this into the next level. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for your inspiring talk. Actually, you discussed in your talk, you discussed almost all the important aspects related to this underutilized or neglected crop species or varieties in the country, including you highlighted some of the research priorities that could be taken by the young scientists in the country. So with that, we will jump into the Q&A session. So there are several questions put in the chat box. May I read it?
I also have access to actually the.
Okay, then okay.
Yeah. I think one question is that utilized versus underutilized. I think it is a very relative term. If you take about rice is heavily utilized, but if you see about the level of domestication, we don't know where we're going to end up with this rice domestication process. I think it is from the wild level to genetically modified status. So any species can in between this. So it is a heavily relative term, but if you take the real definition about underutilized means it is not properly utilized in our food basket and in our research process, so that their importance are not taken into consideration. So in that neglected means that we actually forget about such crops. And we, in the past, we have been using such species, but currently it is not taken into consideration. It is very relative term, but you can define that way that actually people utilize that into their food basket and their food preparation process. So I think to me, actually, that is not a serious problem for taking all these species into different levels. So even utilized species, still we are actually changing now. Take about coconut, right? So coconut domestication process, now we are looking about hybrids and others. So it is very relative term, but most of the underutilized species are early stage of their utilization for the large proportion of the human being. And there are certain other questions. What about caballa? Of course, I didn't list actually everything. It is very delicious fruit, the plant species actually, and I have eaten that. And unfortunately, now caballa is very rare. So it is growing along the wet zone area in some places like water streams and others. But such species are very rare actually now. But it is one good species we can actually make into a kind of a process whereby we have a good pruning system for continuous production of leaf, because caballa we eat actually the leaf particularly. And then there is another question, how the importance of the forest product in terms of food prices. Obviously, the forest products are part and parcel. Some of the forest products are very delicious as well as the nutritious, and also available only for certain communities. Now, it is not only the fruits and vegetables, but so much of forest products are there. So it can be very much supportive actually the current situation, and there are information available what sort of things. And at the moment, actually, forest department is supporting to this, and they allow actually to collection of certain species using some of the permit systems, and it can be one of the important source. And then what will be the importance of forest underutilized crops? Of course, it is part of that. So forest is actually providing raw material for us. Is there a mechanism in place to transfer indigenous knowledge in using underutilized fruits and vegetables? I think we have some information, but actually speaking, when we're looking about large number of different species, I think diversity of such, there is, at the moment, the knowledge is not enough actually. Certain information has been collected by the Ministry of Environment. They have actually indigenous knowledge working group and even NSF, and they have collected, but I think all of you can support you on that, because there are a lot of knowledge gaps actually with the utilization of certain species, and that has to be transferred. Then there is something actually download. I cannot download at this stage. Is there a separate government institution to get information on underutilized crops? There is no separate government institutes, but the Department of Agriculture has published actually certain information. We did publish certain information from with the CARP and others, and you can obtain that. And department has published several the information like their other material. You can browse actually their website, and you will get that information. And I found actually certain PDF copies also. Then is there any place to buy planting material? Of course, yes. Actually, if you go to Horana, the species are available, not in large quantities, right? And at least the certain numbers it is available. And even in Peradeniya, the Hodi Unit 2 is available, and most of the forest nurseries, forest-related species are available for purchasing. And then okay, I think there is one question. Are there any charts, records available regarding these explained varieties, where they can be grown and how long it can be grown? So that I think I can understand that certain information probably not disseminated up to the level, but if you browse about BFN project, Biodiversity for Food and Nutrition project, so some of these underutilized fruit species have been taken into consideration, and their products and their way that actually they want to promote products are actually discussed. And also some of the publication we produce also having this information. I'm not saying that actually all the species, but certain species we are having that. That is why I think we all need to get together, and some species we have information, some species we don't have information. And if we don't have information, I think it is our responsibility to research on that, and then bringing this species into wider utilization level. So how can we overcome challenge in lack of knowledge on anti-nutritional factors, possible adverse effect in promoting underutilized? I think this is the place actually you need to ethnobotany. I think to me, knowledge is actually everywhere, right? So when you're talking to the utilizing people, they know about exactly how do we do that. Now take example of hull, right? Vateria cophilifera. And if you want to produce good quality hull products, so you have to keep that in a flowing water after scraping. So you have to keep that in a flowing water for at least overnight, right? That may get rid of certain the chemicals and perhaps some of the flavonoids and things like that, right? Now in most of the cases we have the traditional practices, but unfortunately our system has not taken into consideration actually what has been removed and what has not been removed, and therefore we need to rely on actually certain preparation based on the traditional one. So I think knowledge is there, but unfortunately we are not tapping that one. So once you tap, I think we need to go beyond that traditional one, and then purify that in knowledge and information and share with the people. So that not with all the species, but if you talk to the people who have been used these plants, or if you browse actually in the global level, there are now certain databases also available, and you can see that what species can use at what stage. I think one example I mentioned. So sometimes spinous plant, when spine is not there, then how does plant protect itself? We need to understand that. So protection comes from spine, and if spines are not there, then there should be some kind of a chemical process actually. So those things known by the ethnobotanical knowledge, but unfortunately certain species we don't have actually ethnobotanical knowledge, where all of you can actually the contribute. So we will upload this to YS. I don't have any problem actually that. Yes, proper awareness is essential. I think we all can play. I think if you understand the essence of my discussion, one person or one institute or even Department of Agriculture alone cannot do that. So much of the thing Department of Agriculture done is collaborative work with several of us actually. So it is essential actually to give adequate publicity for this. And if you look about the dry zone situation, a lot of species are available, but only crisis can bring the importance of the species. Now we're looking about all this because we don't have adequate amount to feed ourselves. Now, the moment that crisis is gone, and then we also going back actually to the normal situation. That is why these species not come into level, because it is actually us to utilize this. Yes, cooking, but a lot of things actually you can obtain from not from the just browsing the Google, but valid authenticated information are available actually in most of the cases. Well, I think those are the things actually. Samantha, if there are any question, I can actually answer.
No, sir, I think you addressed almost all the concerns raised by the participants and put into the chat box. So I hope that we can wind up the session. And this.
But one thing actually, one thing I can very clearly say that. So I think still there are lots to improve actually, right? So we know about certain species, but there are so much of other species that we need to take, but that 1% or 2% cannot do that. I think we need to get together, and I think if anybody willing to provide actually not the local proposal, even global proposal, there are so much of places for that, for funding, for your education and or whatever. But at the end of the day, if they can provide the important products, and if they can take out of this underutilized level into utilized level, I am very much happy to support actually any of the groups or any of the individuals for taking them into the next level.
Yeah, thank you, sir. That's one of the most important thing for the young scientists in the country. If you have any proposals to be made for a funding agency, I think the Professor Gamini Pushpakumar clearly stated that he will be of support in order to develop those, because he has been working in this field for a longer period of time and well-experienced research experts. So this brings us to the end of the knowledge sharing session organized by the Young Scientist Forum, National Science and Technology Commission of Sri Lanka. So on behalf of the YSF Steering Committee, NASTEC, I would like to appreciate the time of and the information shared based on his experience by Professor Gamini Pushpakumara, the resource person today. So sir, thank you very much. I know how busy you are, even with your busy schedule. Thank you for spending more than 1 hour with us in order to give some kind of a knowledge to the young scientists in the country related to the underutilized and neglected food crops that can be used to tackle this food crisis emerging in the country. So thank you very much, sir. At the same time, I would like to thank all the participants who took part in this online knowledge sharing session. So YSF, the steering committee of the YSF, has organized a series of this kind of sessions. So probably we will approach you with future sessions that we have organized. So thank you very much, everyone, for taking part in the YSF knowledge sharing session. Thank you very much.